Okay. Thank you, Brother Richard, for sitting down with the Collective 9 once again. Of course, we're having a little technical issues, but Allah willing, everybody can hear us. And of course, we're once again sitting down right here at the foodie spot, 7350 South Stony Island. And of course, the title of this, the cover story for this paper is Sister Power. This is volume number 38, number 17. The date is January 29th. And as we always ask, why this cover story?
Well, assalamu alaikum, Brother Troy. Thank you for having me. You know, this cover is really devoted to the Women's March 2019. We felt that this is a very significant movement. In particular, not just a domestic movement, but an international movement. So when you see the rise of women who have been oppressed and who have been restricted in societies, governments, in government, in education, in business, all over the planet. When you see a rise of women coming up to challenge these evils, it is an indicator again of a universal change that is taking place. And when you see this type of movement led in particular by a black woman, Tameka Mallory, a Palestinian woman, Linda Sarsour, a Latina, Carmen Perez. Those women represent the majority of people on the planet who are non-white. Then you have Bob Bland, a Caucasian woman who is also part of that leadership, who represents those white women that see the evil and mistreatment in the society, the sexism, and they want to change that. So despite the manufactured controversy and despite efforts to try to inject the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan into this moment, we felt that this was a very important event, and we think our coverage is pretty good as well.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. Of course, we can't get into discussion without talking about some of the, not necessarily covered entirely in this paper, but we have to say we definitely respect and see the work that our sister Tameka Mallory has been doing. Can you talk a little bit about that, those recent events?
Tameka Mallory, of course, is one of the leaders, major leader of the Women's March. And, you know, about almost a year ago, and we're coming up on Saviours Day, our annual celebration, again this year, but last year, almost around this time, in February, Minister Farrakhan spoke, gave his annual Saviours Day address. Tameka Mallory was there. And coming out of that speech, there were these unceasing attacks on him and efforts to try to really paint him as a hater, as an anti-Semite, all these things that he is not. And even more than that, to not only paint him, but to make everyone commit to their misinterpretation about him and the lies that they told on him. So it wasn't enough just to attack him, but now it became necessary to attack anyone who may be around him, anyone who may have said something good about him, anyone who may have taken a picture with him. And so that attempt to isolate the minister is part of a campaign to ultimately destroy him, his work, and the nation. So it starts with these propaganda campaigns, these lies, and then the ability to keep people away from him, to make it appear as though he's by himself, right? So this was tried on Tameka Mallory. She steadfastly refused to denounce the minister. She said, principally, there are some things that she disagrees with the minister about. And she believes that black people having conversations with black people and people having difficult conversations with one another is how we actually reach points of agreement and better understanding. And she said that when she referred to him once as the greatest of all time, she was talking about what this man has done for black people. So, I mean, I think that in media appearances right before the march, which was January 19th, I think she did a very good job of representing her position and projecting strength and independence, which is what we need. So I think a lot of pride, a lot of kudos to Tameka Mallory for standing and making sure, as she said, the voices of black people and black women would be heard in this moment, in this movement. So, I mean, it was a great day. This Women's March now has an agenda. It has some organizing points that they plan on presenting. You've had a blue wave, if you will, of Democrats come into the House of Representatives with the last election. So we'll see if that yields any progressive activity or any progressive political outcome. We'll see. But this is a continuous process to try to bring greater justice and equity to the society, and not just American society, but actually all over the world. There were about, I think, 350 different March observances, celebrations, etc. So this is a pretty big event. You can read about it at finalcall.com and pick up your copy of the paper and check it out.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. Of course, the fight is going on as it relates to injustice and what's going on in our community and across the world. And of course, going to the second article of the paper, in the same spirit of the Women's March movement, not necessarily a part of it, we have the story, International Pressure Mounts for Release of Black Journalists from Iran Jailed in America. So can you talk a little bit about that and what's going on?
This is a pretty interesting story and an important one. It's the story of Marzia Hashemi, who is an American citizen who's worked for and lived in Iran for a couple decades. She's a respected journalist. She retains her American citizenship. She came back in January to visit family and to do some documentary work. She was arrested. No one knew what she was arrested for initially. No one even knew where she was. She has children and family here. Eventually, it was revealed that she had been detained by the FBI as a material witness in some criminal case. No other details. She was arrested in St. Louis and flown and detained somewhere in Washington, D.C. So this is very troubling because, one, lack of information. Two, this woman is a journalist. Three, she's a black woman. Four, what exactly are you holding her for? And if you're not holding her and accusing her of a crime, what is going on? Then there are questions about the conditions of her detention, whether or not she's been allowed food that she would eat as a Muslim. Her hijab or religious head covering was taken from her. She eventually had to find a t-shirt to cover her head. And there was just a lot of questions about how this is handled. We know that this is a period of great conflict and friction between Iran and the U.S. We know that the sanctions President Trump reinstated a couple months ago are harsh. We know that there are those that are building this drumbeat against Iran. So we see all of this as part of that same subject. So there's a need to be vigilant. In particular, when the U.S. continually tries to criticize Iran and other nations about their treatment of journalists, about respect for the press. So this is really interesting because you have an American citizen deprived of her rights in America at the doing of the U.S. government. So this is pretty major. We're still following it. We're hoping for an update by January 23rd. We will see, hopefully by then, whether she is released or whether we get more information about why she was being held and if she will be held. But the authority says she will testify before a grand jury, and then we will see what happens after that.
Thank you very much. We have to, and of course this paper in many instances is one of the things that I appreciated, and many may not notice this, and maybe it's something I created, that the paper is very themed in terms of really looking at the fights of injustice that are going on in our community, and some of them by Allah's grace and permission, are definitely very clear victories, and some of them not so much. So going to the next article in the paper, Black Lives Don't Matter. Can you give us a little bit about the update in that case?
This is a couple of pieces by one of our contributing writers, Brother Brian 18X. And they deal with two recent court decisions in Chicago, or legal decisions. In one case, a judge found officers that were accused of lying about the shooting death of Laquan McDonald. This is the young man who was killed, shot 16 times by a Chicago police officer several years ago. That officer, Jason Van Dyke, was subsequently charged and tried and convicted, right? Along with that, other officers were charged with lying in their reports about what happened and trying to cover up the shooting of Laquan McDonald by Jason Van Dyke. One of the officers charged was his partner. So the judge in that case decided that these officers should be acquitted, that the state did not prove its case, that they lied. But it's pretty compelling, and it's pretty shocking because the accounts of the officers don't match what you see on the video. And so the judge basically said, regardless to what the video shows, you can't judge what the officers were thinking in their mind. Laquan McDonald was unarmed. Well, he's not unarmed, he had a little knife. He was walking away from police officers. There were officers on the scene. There was another officer en route with a taser. Officer Jason Van Dyke rolls up, gets out of the car, and within a very, very short time, shoots Laquan McDonald. 16 times. 16 times. So you look at the video, then you look at some of the accounts of the officers that said Laquan McDonald was threatening them. You don't see that on the video. So there's a lot of anger and outrage about that decision because it again supports this blue wall of silence, this refusal of police officers to tell the truth is what activists see. And now we see a refusal of a judge to recognize what so many people see as readily important, as readily evident rather. So it bears witness to the Honorable Elijah Muhammad's teaching that one white man commits the crime and you go to his brother, another white man, as a judge to try to get justice, and you get none. Major case. Then you had the sentencing of Mr. Van Dyke, and he was sentenced to 81 months in jail. That's about 7 years. But based on time served and other conditions placed by the judge, this man who shot this teenager 16 times could be out in 3 years after committing murder. He's a convicted murderer. Then there were 16 additional charges, right? Each of those instances when he shot this young man is a count of aggravated battery. Essentially, the judge did not sentence him on not one count for aggravated battery. He talked about the pain of both sides, the officer and his family, and Laquan McDonald and his family. So again, hence the title or the headline, Black Lives Don't Matter. Because when there's no punishment, when there's no recognition of official misconduct and deadly misconduct, we got a problem. So we got both of those stories in this week. Again, go to finalcall.com or get your copy of the paper and make it your business to get it every week so you can stay connected with what's happening in our community.
Thank you, Brother Richard. Just another story on that same spirit. Of course, we're not that we don't see ourselves different from our indigenous people to this area of the country or the world, what some are called the Native Americans, but they also had a march.
Right.
Can you speak a little bit about that as well?
Well, the Indigenous Peoples March was held on January 18th, the day before the Women's March, and it drew Indigenous activists from around the country and different parts of the world. Again, as part of what the Honorable Elijah Muhammad described at one point as a universal cry for justice. So like women, the indigenous people are rising up. They are being, for example, you have women in Alaska, indigenous women that are being murdered, that are disappearing. There are others that they are feared are being forced into prostitution. You have land being taken from indigenous people. You have a whole fight now, for example, in Brazil, over what will happen with the Amazon and that land, who will own it, who will control it. You have here in America, every treaty that America made with the indigenous people here has been violated. You have indigenous people in Africa, South America, Asia, who are steadily fighting for their survival. So this was an opportunity for these groups to come together and for these people to make their own case and to begin to coalesce and work with one another. Pretty powerful gathering. What a lot of people saw was a confrontation between some young whites from Covington Catholic School in Kentucky and a Native American brother outside the Lincoln Memorial. Mm-hmm. And essentially, there was a confrontation, ugly confrontation. And it represented, again, I think, the disrespect of Native peoples, the idea of white privilege, the idea of white entitlement, lack of respect, even though there was apparently a group of people that have been called Black Hebrews that got into some kind of verbal back and forth with these young people, but the Native brother, they had a permit to be at the Lincoln Memorial as part of the Indigenous Peoples March. So essentially, this young man in particular, who you see in the video facing him, and others essentially blocked their way, but the brother, the Native American brother, who's also a Vietnam veteran, by the way, said that he had hoped that his drumming would help diffuse the situation. But you see the youngsters at one point taunting this man, many of them wearing these Make America Great Again hats. So, you know, you have to ask the question, are they better than their fathers? And I would say all indicators are that they are not. So these are all examples of the serious problems that this country is facing. And so the question is, how will she deal with these problems? You can keep denying them, and you can keep clinging to white victimhood if you want to. But the problems will only grow and become more and more manifest before your eyes, not just domestically, but internationally.
Thank you, Brother Richard. I'm going to jump a little further ahead to an article, once again, that I'm quite sure you're a little bit familiar with, and that's the editorial for this week's paper entitled Rep. Green's Folly and False Charges Against Farrakhans. Can you talk about the little backstory behind that?
Oh, my.
Don't tell them what it says completely in the story, because we're going to make them read it, but give us a little more context on it.
My favorite part of the paper this week. No, I mean, this is, again, we talked earlier about this effort to try to isolate Minister Farrakhan. Well, Representative Al Green of Texas, whose district includes Houston, came out and called the minister a bigot and compared him to Donald Trump. So that didn't sit well with me. Number one, because it's untrue. And so to take a man like Minister Farrakhan, whose life's work has been trying to unite people, our people in particular, but also speak to the hurt and injustices that others have suffered, and to try to compare him to Donald Trump, absolutely ridiculous. But it is, again, part of this orchestrated campaign to try to discredit Minister Farrakhan. So the president is, and it's kind of two-pronged. The president is so bad that they really can't defend him, his actions, his policies, his words, his lies. Difficult to defend him. So rather than trying to defend him, they try to equate Minister Farrakhan with him and say, well, if you condemn Trump, you got to condemn Farrakhan. Wrong. They're not the same. Minister Farrakhan has a 65-year record in ministry that's based on the redemption of people. That's based on taking people from where they are and bringing them to another level, a higher level of awareness and existence. So he didn't call Haiti and Latin American countries shithole nations. Trump did that. He didn't call for more white immigrants from the Scandinavian countries. Trump did that. He didn't call black athletes that protest the viciousness of police brutality and police murder. He didn't call them sons of bitches. Mr. Trump did that. He didn't institute a Muslim ban. Mr. Trump did that. He hasn't disrespected and talked about the ability to grope women at will. Mr. Trump did that. He hasn't lied. Mr. Trump did that. So you see on and on and on and on what Mr. Trump has done. You cannot turn that around and say, well, Farrakhan did that too. Absolutely not. What Minister Farrakhan has done is speak truths. At some point it may be harsh. At some point it may be unpleasant. In particular, in a society where black people and Jewish people, in a society where white people and Jewish people are not used to being corrected by a black man. But the question is not the color of the skin of the man who is speaking. The question is, what is the nature of what is coming out of his mouth?
That's right.
And if it's true, then you should look in the mirror, accept the truth so that you can perhaps improve your society. We say that if America has done more evil than Rome, Egypt, Babylon, and these societies pictured in the Holy Quran and Bible, does America get a pass for 400 years of slavery? Does she get a pass on lynching black people? Does she get a pass for dropping the atomic bomb on the Japanese? Does she get a pass for medical experimentation on black folks? Does she get a pass for giving Native American people blankets steeped in smallpox? Does she get a pass for destroying black leadership and black organizations? Does she get a pass for fomenting violence and the disruption and destruction of black families, black men, women, and children? If other nations in the past have been destroyed according to scripture, she got something coming too. America does. So Minister Farrakhan's work has been to warn. It has been to say, look, you're off course. Now, for people that consider themselves damn near infallible, that consider themselves superior, that consider themselves to be the epitome of what it is and to be ruling the planet as they have done for the last 6,000 years, unfortunately, they don't like good advice. They don't want to be corrected. They don't want the mirror being pointed in their face where they can see their own evil. So they attack the one who tells the truth. This is what we're seeing with Minister Farrakhan. And we actually lay out in the editorial the definition of bigot. And we say, read it for yourself, and then you tell me if Minister Farrakhan fits that definition. So when the minister speaks, he's rooted in scripture. And I would say Congressman Al Green, he's not a neophyte, he's not a novice. So, you know, what his motivation is, we don't know. Maybe now that the Democrats are in the majority in the House, maybe Nancy Pelosi and some others don't want him shouting too loud about impeach Trump because they don't want to offend white voters. Maybe that's it. Maybe there's something else that he desires from the Democratic Party. We don't know what it is, what motivated him, but we do know he's in error. And we do know that he is wrong. And we do know that plantation politics will never free black people. And so we need leadership that will stand for what is right, regardless to whom or what, And again, it's interesting that Representative Green decided to speak up against the minister because others have not. Others have not. So we just wanted to make it known, regardless of what the white folks say, regardless of what the Jewish figures and groups say, regardless of what the Democrats say, regardless of what the Republicans say, and regardless of what Negro politicians say, the minister is emphatically not an evil man, and we are not going to let them get away with slandering him. We plan to defend him and to keep defending him, and as the Quran says, we will see in the end who the good end is for.
Praise you to Allah. Thank you for your insight as well as what is contained in the paper, but thank you for that background story behind that. I'm going to jump to the man that you're talking about. That is definitely one who is worthy to defend, and of course that's the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan. But of course during this weekend there was the commemoration of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. So can you give us a little insight on the minister's article?
Well, the minister's article this week is called Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., Not a Dreamer, but a Man Evolving Toward a Common Goal for His People. So this article breaks through the myths about Dr. King. And it lays out the minister's appreciation and respect for Dr. King, but it also traces somewhat Dr. King's development. So the King you most often hear about, 1963, I Have a Dream. Most people don't even know that element of the speech, I have a dream, little black girls, little white boys, hand in hand, that was not even part of his original message. This was a theme that he had used at different times. Some of his aides didn't want him to use that theme, but he used it and it rang. But there's another speech that he made in 1967 about the U.S. war in Vietnam, where he condemned the war. And at one point he called the American government the greatest purveyor of violence in the world today. He was condemned by about 200 newspapers. He was condemned by respectable Negro politicians and white folks. He was condemned by major magazines like Time, the Washington Post, the New York Times. So this article helps to lay out who Dr. King really was in his entirety and not leave him frozen in 1963. So I mean, it's a great article, and there's a great picture of Dr. King meeting with the Honorable Elijah Muhammad. What? Yeah, they met. So this is why you need to read the final call and see for yourself. Look through your own eyes and make your own decisions. And so long as we depend on others to do for us what we must do for ourselves, including obtaining, analyzing, and presenting information, we will never be free. So get the final call, go to finalcall.com, get your digital subscription, or get your print edition every week.
And I'm going to close out. Of course, there's so much more in here, but I want to close out.
You got to get the whole paper, man.
Come on, get the whole paper. Get the brothers, find the brothers on the street, subscribe to the digital edition. Subscribe and get the paper if you're in the area where the FOI happen not to be. You can subscribe and get the physical paper to you. But please support the final call, not just for the enlightful information, but support the cause of the liberation of our people. And on that same spirit, there's an article that I'll close on. Saviours Day, as we mentioned before, Saviours Day 2019 is right around the corner. You want to make sure that you get your tickets. You can get them from Ticketmaster. I don't have the other number, but I know you can call Mas Mariam at 773-324-6000. Get your tickets to Saviours Day right here in Chicago, February 17, 2019 at the United Center. Can you talk about the article about the brothers hitting the streets right here in Chicago?
Well, you know, we just wanted to highlight the continued work of the FOI, who are working diligently to get the word to our people, to get them to come out to the United Center on February 17th Doors will open at 2 o'clock Central Standard Time. You can get more information at NOI.org. But we wanted to highlight this work that is being done and encourage our people to support the work. You heard about Farrakhan, why don't you come hear from him? And I guarantee you, because there will be other things going on that weekend, so you need to really go to NOI.org. You can register for Saviours Day and participate in the whole thing. There's going to be the Children's Village, which is activities, everything we've had in the past, from books to lessons in prayer to singing to the Jesse White tumblers to little trains running and books and fun and games and video games. All the things that you need if you're going to have a healthy community. So Saviours Day represents the creation of an alternative reality for Black people. A reality that we need and a reality that we can absolutely forge for ourselves if we really want to. So this is like a mini example of what we can do. It's February 15th through 17th. It closes on the 17th with a major address by Minister Farrakhan. Now, with everything that's been going on from last February to this February, I don't think you want to miss this one. This might not be the one to miss. So again, go to NOI.org for more information. And you can call the Ma 773-324-6000 to get your tickets. See any member of the Nation of Islam. You can call me. And but come on out. I guarantee you will have a great, it'll be a great experience. And I think every Black man, woman, and child should experience Saviours Day at least once. Thousands of Black people, no fighting, no arguing, no cussing, no smoking, nobody disrespecting your wife, nobody trying to feel on your daughter, nobody trying to steal your husband, but a very wholesome family atmosphere. And we need that. We need a place of peace. And that's what Saviours Day represents, peace and progress.
Thank you, Brother Richard. I'll give you the floor, as I always do. Any closing words?
Well, we had a few weeks ago the great entrepreneur and teacher, Dr. Boyce Watkins, spoke with the girls at Muhammad University. We were blessed to have him come back, and he did a presentation with the young men. So again, get that on finalcall.com, get that in this week's edition of the Final Call newspaper, and see what we can do when we unite with one another and take the brilliance of our young men and begin to shape it into that which is good, strong, courageous, wholesome, and independent. That's where our future lies. So support Black institutions, the Final Call, and Muhammad University of Islam, and Masa Maryam, and come out and support Saviours Day. I guarantee you will, I can promise you this, you're going to learn something. That's a promise.
Thank you.
And you're going to be welcome.
Yeah.
That's a promise too.
Yes, sir. So thank you once again for viewing Behind the Final Call cover story. Please like and share. Let everybody know where they can find this. Of course, you want to visit finalcall.com. You want to go ahead and buy a lecture. Download an MP3 for $2.
That's right.
You know, you can carry it wherever you want it. Have it with you all the time. Don't buy one, don't buy two. Hey, you're going to find something that you want on there. Get your subscription to the digital edition of the Final Call. Get your paper, whatever your preference is. Make sure you do that. Like and subscribe to Facebook, finalcall.com, the Twitter, Instagram, and all that. And please, once again, the Collective 9, visit the website, thecollective9.org. Until next time, peace.
This one.